Who are you?
Oh, I don't know who I am, and all of my life is a pursuit to find out who I am. But I have a hunch that as I am doing more and more experiments in service and stillness, I think I'm finding that who I am is connected to who you are. And that's a very beautiful place to be in. So I don't quite know who I am, but I know that it's connected to you and your inquiry, and together perhaps we have a greater shot at figuring it out.
What is Gandhi 3.0 model, and how do you see it emerging today?
So when Gandhiji came and he was doing his work, he said, the work that I'm doing is old as hills. It's rooted in the values that are old as hills. But at his time, in his circumstances, there was only one of him and many of us. We looked up to him, we admired him, he guided us, and he guided a whole country to do something unprecedented in the history of mankind. But really he was bringing these ancient values into a modern context at that time. Then came Vinoba, and Vinoba did the same kind of thing, but he walked from village to village. And as he's walking, he's connecting people. He said the essence of his work was to connect heart to heart. And he did this in a one-to-one sort of way. So with Gandhiji, there was a many-to-one relationship. With Vinoba, there was a one-to-one relationship. And now we live in a time of really unprecedented challenges. And we don't know how we'll solve it, but we have unprecedented possibilities also, particularly with technology and internet technologies that connect us. We can create what we call the Gandhi 3.0, the third version of Gandhi's experiments in a many-to-many context. So we shift from we shift from many-to-one to one-to-one, and now many-to-many. So that's the possibility. So a lot of times people ask, is Gandhi relevant? Are the values that he was talking about, are they not outdated? And I think they sometimes mix Tantra and Tattva. So the values and the manifestation. Sometimes the tools, we end up looking at Gandhi just for the toolkit that he suggested, but actually it's the values. And how can those values, are they relevant today? Absolutely. How do they manifest? Well, that's up to you and I. We have to figure that out. And if we do it in a 3.0 context, which is a many-to-many context, then I think we'll see an emergence of some exciting and hopeful possibilities for mankind.
Could you please give examples that manifest Gandhi 3.0 model?
So we have seen this many-to-many possibility emerge in the commercial world. If you look at companies like eBay, they're not selling any product. They're connecting many people to many people. If you look at platforms like YouTube, they're not creating a video. Flickr is not posting any photos. Meetup is not hosting any events. I mean, they're a platform, and on a platform, many people meet many others. But that's done with an idea, that's done with this idea of maximizing commercial interest. So that's their organizing principle. And then we had a lot of movements that were done in this way. You saw Arab Spring, no center, no leader, no money, and it did something unprecedented. It toppled over entire governments in many countries. And how were they able to do that without a center? And that was also the Gandhi 3.0 model in play. But that was done with fear at its core, with anger in many instances at its core. And now I think what we want to do is try to put love as the organizing principle, love as the force for social change. And if you put that at the center and you apply these capacities that we have, what will emerge? And I think at its core, this was the Gandhian experiment. This was the Vinoba experiment. And I think we are called in this time and space to emerge something beautiful, a new dimension of possibility through love. And I think that's unique. So it's been done for commerce. It's been done for activism. We need to do it for love now.
What connects you to Gandhi and Vinoba?
I don't know why I feel connected to Gandhi, but I do. I don't know why in 7th grade I decided to get all the books of Gandhi from my junior high school library and said I'm going to write a biography on Gandhi. I don't know why so many Gandhians from all walks of life end up in our living room in the Silicon Valley, in a different country. So I don't know how exactly I'm connected to Gandhi, but I feel very connected to him. So many times I'll be talking to people who have studied all his works, and I am not a scholar of Gandhi by any means, but I feel like I really intuitively know what he was seeking. And so I will engage in wonderful, happy debates, so to be honest, I don't know. I don't know why I feel connected to Gandhi and Vinoba, but I know that there's a strong sort of lineage that they're a part of which I also feel a part. And this is a lineage that tries to apply spiritual merit for social benefit. There's a lot of people who will use spiritual merit and say it's a waste on social change because this dimension of reality is just, it's always going to be like this. There's always going to be suffering. But Gandhi says, no, I'm going to try to apply it here, and I think in that sense he was unique among spiritual giants in the world. And that bodhisattva calling, that calling to apply these merits to human suffering, to suffering of all life, is really the Gandhian experiment. And, I just feel moved to be a part of that, some small part,
Before we go back to some recording that sound, I was thinking about, because you speak often about the 4 shifts, and I think it's so much more relevant as compared, so Gandhi saw that, Vinoba saw it, and then in the current context, so if you could share a little bit more about those 4 shifts and how it was relevant, the essence was relevant at the times of Vinoba and Gandhi, and how in the current context maybe. So if you could throw some light on that.
I think every generation is going to have a different lens on the problems of society. Ultimately, you can break it down to spiritual problems, but those problems are going to look very different in every generation, and we have to address them in a very unique way in every generation. So I think we need to create our own vocabulary. We need to, be bold, be gutsy, find new ways to do, perhaps the same old things, but make them relevant. And I think in that sense, we talk about these 4 shifts, which is a shift from consumption to contribution, from transaction to trust, from isolation to community, and from scarcity to abundance. And these shifts aren't just like nice words, they actually, it's profound, because if you were to probably do a survey and ask people, like, do you feel more like a contributor or a consumer? Most would say, I feel more like a consumer. Do you feel more isolated or connected? Most would say, I feel more isolated. If you ask, are you, dealing more in transaction or trust? Most would say, I'm in transaction. Are you feeling scarce or abundant? Scarce. So these are very real things on one side, on the left column, and we need to shift to the right column, which are its opposites. And how do we do that? We don't have a way to do that. We have some ways. We've experimented with a lot of ways. But I think we need to innovate. We need to push some boundaries and say, how do we use the capacities of today to address these issues and to cultivate these shifts? And that's happening. And a lot of people are waking up to it and saying, yeah, I've got one small piece of the puzzle. I'm doing the same thing. You are doing the same thing. And together it's adding up to a very new possibility that I think would probably make Gandhi proud.
What makes you come alive? And what is your expression of love?
How have I learned love? For me, I have learned love through service. Whenever I do a small act of kindness, no matter how small, maybe somebody drops a pencil and you pick it up and you give it to them, or you hold open a door. But if you do it with a lot of heart, with a deep intention to connect with them, even if you may never say hello to them, that intention, that movement inside of us, before we even take that action, reconnects us, creates a stillness of the mind. So the smallest act of kindness creates that stillness of the mind. And in that stillness, we drop into our interconnectedness. And that interconnectedness is what gives birth to a kind of simplicity. It's not just a material simplicity, because that by itself is not sufficient, but it is combined with an inner sufficiency, an inner contentment that there is enough. So the smallest act of kindness done with a big heart, with an open heart, with an intention to connect with the other person can take us into the banks of love. It's a long ocean, it's a far ocean, but as we practice, we can really step deeper and deeper into that, into those waves and submerge ourselves in the flow of Maitri, of compassion, of love. So that is the practice.
And what's your individual expression of love? Or your practice, one of the practice which you, in your lifelong, have been doing?
So I think for me, everything is practice. At least I try to make everything a practice. And in that sense, I have no practice. And everything is a practice. Both would be true. I try to be undefined in my practice. So I can't say that I do this in this part of my life, or I run this organization that does this kind of work or has this kind of impact. It's all undefined. When I go to the airport and they ask me, to fill out a form that says, "What's your profession?" I really have a hard time. I'm part social entrepreneur. I'm part entrepreneur even, although not working with money. I am part, a social worker. I'm part meditator. I am part a seeker. I am part everything. I'm part a person that fails. And really, it's just a combination of these things. I think in our life, sometimes we compartmentalize too much. And we tend to forget that music is the silence in between the notes, So a lot of the things that it's very easy to take a circle, a whole, and chop it up into small pieces. But it's not so simple to bring all those things back, Just gluing back a broken pot is not going to give you the same beauty as a broken pot. So what is that whole? What is that interconnection in between that seems negligible, that seems subtle, that seems immeasurable, but yet it's so real? And how can we honor that whole before we break it up into small pieces and then realize, oh wow, let's bring it back together? What are those commons? And really isn't all of life at the center and us its part? If we come to that realization, I think we have a whole new world. So for me, my life is an expression to move from this separation and these disjoint ways of bringing things together to a kind of wholeness, to that unbroken wholeness, to that fullness that I think we're capable of, and that I think is what we're longing in our deepest way.
How do you respond to a world consumed by impact and scale?
I was at a talk recently, and there was a fellow that raised his hand, and he says, there's so many problems in the world, and we need to fix them fast, and the fastest solution I've got is like maybe 4 years, 5 years, How fast do you think generosity can work? And I kind of looked at him, and I said, 10,000 years, maybe, give or take another 50,000, I think we're in a mad rush, to finish, to solve, to accomplish. And maybe the purpose of these problems, of even our suffering, isn't to solve it, but to really understand it. And if that's the purpose, then everything takes on a very different perspective. So how do we get out of the seduction of scale? It's a very important question. What is it that if we start to think that, wow, I helped one person and I want to help like 1 billion other people and I want to do it as fast as possible, there's a kind of violence that starts creeping in. And that violence is subtle, and that violence is perhaps even internal. And really, do the people who receive our offerings, do they really want us to create so many different side problems, on the side? We don't know. There's a famous story of a thief. He goes and robs everyone and hurts other people and brings all his, all the goods back home. And his family asks him, it's like, his family is happy at first, but then some wise person says, have you ever told your family how you get all these goods? And do they really know that you're hurting other people to benefit them? And sometimes to benefit other people, we're hurting ourselves, and is that good mathematics? To try to build, you build 5 bridges and you burn 3 along the way, that's probably not good mathematics. So how can we not be seduced by scale? I think the source of our addiction to scale is a worldview that is purely external. So on the outside, it feels like I can take this 1 and scale to 10 to 1,000,000, and that will benefit a lot of people. But once you start looking on the inside, scale takes on a very different perspective. Scale becomes an externality. If I am just being the change and I am connected in that beingness to your beingness and to the beingness of all life, then by a mere change that I create here, it is going to ripple out to so many other people in so many ways that I may not even be aware of. So as soon as our worldview shifts from just outside to outside and inside, and to perhaps at some point inside alone, then I think the mathematics of scale look very different, especially the mathematics of external scale. Then you start to shift from maximizing output and impact to really aligning yourself with inner transformation.
What motivates you to keep walking on this path of service?
Generosity is generative. So if you do a generous act, you can ask any kid and they'll verify this. You do a generous act and you feel like doing another generous act. So I don't think the question is how do we keep ourselves motivated to be kind, to be compassionate, to be service-hearted. I think the question really is why are we putting so much effort in being selfish? It's actually a lot of work to be self-centered, to be me-centered. It's a lot less work to be other-centered. So if we just do that, and if you ask any child, you see that, right? They do an act of kindness. If they are in that pure state of mind, they will inevitably feel like doing another one. And it's not going to feel stressful. It feels very stressful to do a selfish act and then to scheme up another selfish act. So the question isn't how does generosity keep us regenerative, or keep us regenerated? How does it keep us motivated? I think that's natural. That's our natural state. The real question is, why have we bought into the dream, the mirage, that selfishness is a motivating force? Selfishness is not a motivating force. It's very violent. It's very counterproductive. It takes so much effort to be selfish and then selfish again and then to be selfish again, to feel isolated and to respond to isolation with saying, oh, I want to grab onto more. It's extremely unproductive. So I think the big secret that all the sages have been talking about, and it's not even copyrighted, I think it's available for free for anyone who wants to take, is that, look, give, love. And the more you do that, the more natural you'll feel, and the more you'll want to give, and the more you'll want to smile, and the more you'll want to love. And you'll feel that twinkle in your eye, that bounce in your step, and you'll just feel like, wow, this is life, How could I have lived any other way,
Any insights from your journey?
I think many times when I feel scarce, when I feel like I don't have enough, I always remind myself that service doesn't start when you have something to give. It blossoms naturally when you have nothing left to take. And that space of not taking something, which is to be empty, and in that emptiness, full and complete, is the space that I strive to go towards. And I think it's possible. I haven't gotten there. I don't know what that fully feels like. But I have a very strong hunch that it's possible, and that is our greatest possibility. For you, for me, and for all of us collectively. प्रभु ने रहवानु मन थाय एवु हृदय बनाऊ मारू मंदिर कहवानु मन थाय એવું હૃદય બનાવું મારું મંદિર કહેવાનું મન થાય, એવું હૃદય બનાવું મારું પ્રભુને રહેવાનું મન થાય, એવું હૃદય બનાવું મારું મંદિર કહેવાનું મન થાય, એવું હૃદય બનાવું